Hello and welcome back to round 3 of the Basingstoke locals. So on the left we have Fftcg returning with his mono ice from the last round, and on the right we have James Bolch, who's running a Knights priming deck. The Knights priming, it's a very heavy forward deck, doesn't run much in the way of backups, but is it's quite aggro, and it floods quite easy. So we see James has drawn into his Larsa, so I imagine being a low backup deck, he's going to opt to keep that hand. You see Matt has mulliganed. I believe he drew into 2 Renoa, which early game isn't really what you want to be seeing. So it looks like Matt's got first turn, draws a Shinryu off the top, and he already had one in hand. So let's see what he does here. Okay, so we're going to discard 2 to play a Lock. Lock's going to allow him to turn over cards off the top of his deck after he chooses a card type that he wants to search for. Obviously he chose to search for a backup and put the Emina to hand. And he's passed turn back to James. James, I imagine now he's going to pitch 2 to play a Larsa, and that's going to allow him to search into his Tyvus. So that's exactly what we're going to see here. And there we go, there's the Tyvus. So Tyvus, when he enters the field, is going to let you search for 1 job or card name warrior and add it to your hand. And for cost 0, you can play a job or card name warrior of cost 3 or less from your hand onto the field. So it looks like we're going to overpay here to play the Tyvus. I would say the usual target here is Axstar, but he has a lot of knights. So right, okay, so we see a Furion. So yeah, okay, so this is the Furion. If you control 5 or more characters, he gains haste, and when he attacks you get to draw a card. We're activating Tyvus' ability to play in the Mog. This is the Mog that allows you to draw, and if you put it in the break zone you cancel a search. So that's going to slow down that Emina backup ramp that James was obviously going for. Now we see 2 discard into the Emina anyway. That's going to just push James to get rid of that Mog, and then it's done, it's out of the way. Right, so turn is back to James. I can see he's holding a it looks like a Ramza. I can't see the other cards. So we go to combat and we hit a Camlanaut on damage 1. So no EX there. Okay, so we're playing into a Leo, which is going to allow to draw a card. It looks like he hit his... is that Ramza? Yes. Yes, so he's opting to warp Ramza. So Ramza is warp 2. When he enters the field, choose 1 job knight of cost 5 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. Secondary ability, dole 4 active job knights. Choose 1 forward opponent controls and break it, and deal your opponent a point of damage. He's walked in. Now he's passed turn back to Matt. So here we're going to tap 2, warp in a Theodore. So Theodore, when he warps in, will force your opponent to discard a card, and I think if your opponent is 2 or less cards in hand, he gains 2k power, haste and first strike. Turn pass back, so we're just going to knock one of those warp counters off of the Ramza, and let's see what he has to play. Just checking the limit break deck, looking to see if there's anything he wanted. Didn't look like there was. What are we going to see? So it looks like he's a little indecisive about what he wants to do. So we just go to combat, swing with the Leo, hit Emina on the second point, and we hit the Kefka on the third point, which is probably quite a shame for Matt. I imagine he wanted to see that Kefka. It's a real staple in mono ice. Right, so removing one of those warp counters off the Theodore. We drew into Minwoo and Kurosumi. So here we tap 2. We see Minwoo, that is going to target Tyvus for freeze. Looks like we're just deciding what Matt wants to do, whether he wants to play anything else this turn. Bearing in mind he's holding 2 cards that he can't cost with. It looks like opting to check that back up, knowing the Rams is going to warp in next turn, just looking to see what he's going to be dealing with. So he discards 2, overpay for the Surges, Dole and freeze the Leo. That's going to protect him for a moment from taking 2 points of damage. And here we're going to see the Ramsar warp in. So now we're going to get to search the break zone and play in a knight of job 5 or less. A knight of cost 5 or less, sorry. So here we go, we're activating the ability. And what are we playing? We're playing into Gawain. Gawain, when he enters the field, you may search for up to 1 fire job knight other than named Gawain and 1 water job knight other than named Gawain. Add them to your hand. So that's great value off of the Ramsar. Just put something on field and put 2 cards in hand for warp 2. So amazing value, really. Okay, so I didn't actually see what the targets were there. But we know he got 2 back. So his hand's pretty stacked at the moment. I'm sure he's got a few options, but thinking hard about the best way to cost whatever it is that he wants to do. So it looks like he's about to pay to play something large. I can't quite make out what the hand is. Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's thinking about playing into, unless he's holding an Ifrit, because he has tapped 1 and he's put 3 down, so that would be a 7 cost hard cast. Here I think he's just remembering, obviously he has Tyvus's ability, so there we go, we're going to see Axe Star. So now all of the forwards other than cost 3 are going to become doled and frozen, and it's going to allow him to play in 1 fire or ice forward of cost 3 or less. And there we go, we see the Furion come in, and now Furion's live because he controls 5 or more characters, he has haste. So we're looking at least 1 forward this turn who's going to be able to attack. And we are playing something else because we've tapped the Larsa. And we're playing into Garland. So when Garland enters the field, choose 1 job name other than Garland in your break zone, add it to your hand. When job knights enter the field when Garland's there, choose a forward opponent controls, deal it 5k. And we're seeing a hard cast Ifrit on top of that. So that is going to just resolve Surges straight away. So now we've got Furion with haste, we have Ifrit with haste. So that, I think we're just checking there. making sure that the damage still occurs even when it hasn't been primed, which it does. So the surges is resolved, and here we go, we're going to see one swing. So here we go, damage 4, and swing with Ifrit, we're at damage 5. Yeah, that probably didn't feel great, but not to forget that we did have the double Shinryu in hand from the beginning of the game, so there we go, straight away. And now it's cost 2 because of the number of forwards that James controls. When it enters the field, it's going to prompt a search for any card, add to hand. So we're just triggering that search. Usual target would be to search another Shinryu, because then of course you can play the ability straight away, Tidal Wave, which removes all of your opponent's forwards. Well, it breaks all of your opponent's forwards, but looks like we've opted to search for a G deleter. So as he's at 3 backups, when G deleter comes in, it's going to allow him to draw a card and dull and freeze a character opponent controls. So here we're seeing him straight away playing Tidal Wave. So now that is going to break every forward that James controls, which puts him in a very vulnerable position because he only has 1 backup and he has spent a lot of resources, and I do believe he has no cards in hand. So here we see Theodore coming in for the swing, dealing that first point of damage, and we see a Charlotte go down there. We've drawn into Tyvus and Clive. Unfortunately, he can't actually afford to cast either of those. So, yep, we see the pass turn. Here we go, tap 3. Here comes the G deleter. So that's going to dull and freeze Larsa, making costing even harder. Swinging for Brave with Shinryu, hitting a second Charlotte in a row on the damage. So, yeah, this is becoming problematic for James. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen next. Yeah, it looks like he has enough for the hard cast, for the Tyvus in hand. I think just checking how many are in Matt's hand. Yeah, so we've got that hard cast. I imagine he's probably running out of targets by this point. Yep, so yeah, we see the Axe Star, but it's not going to bring anything in with it. So yeah, we're past turn, back to Matt. Now drawing. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think Matt's kind of got all of the answers here. So here we go. With tap 1, play the Shantoto, which is cost reduced because of the number of cards in his opponent's hand, and that's going to bring something back. Tap 2, discard 1, and we'll play your Stola, who has haste because your opponent has less than 2 cards. Swing, it's going to deal 9k, which resolves that Axe Star straight away. We hit the Gabranth on the EX, so that's going to let him bring a, I believe it was a bring back a knight. Yeah, and bring back a knight to his hand. And here we're also going to ditch 1, play a Laswell, dull and freeze the Tyvus again. He's going to have to do something pretty special. So here we go, I'm going to start digging through that limit break deck. Hard times. Okay, so it looks like he's upped into show hand, so it's more or less a concede at this point, showing that he doesn't have much of a choice. He has to play in a forward, but your Stola will be able to attack, resolve that, because he has no cards in hand. It's a straight 9k, so it will break it, and then Shinryu, Brave, swing, going with most likely, I don't know, so trigger the expert, then he's going to swing Theodore, swing Laswell, and that's game. So it was a very interesting matchup, and it was very heavily lent in James's favour towards in the first half of the game. Obviously, he ramped up real good. Unfortunately, he just didn't know that Matt was holding those two Shinryu from the beginning of the game. So obviously Matt was just waiting and biding his time to be in the right position, let James spend all of his resources, and then resolve everything. Set up, take a couple points of damage. It's pretty safe for him to do that. But anyway, this was the third and final part of this tournament, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon.